Wednesday, September 11, Leaving All to Flee from Jesus. Read Mark chapter 14, verses 43 to 52. What happens here that is so crucial to the plan of salvation? Mark 14, beginning at verse 43. Just as he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, appeared. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. The men seized Jesus and arrested him. Then one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Am I leading a rebellion," said Jesus, "that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts, and you did not arrest me. But the scriptures must be fulfilled." Then everyone deserted him and fled. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. It is shocking that one of Jesus' closest associates betrayed him to his enemies. The Gospels do not go into great detail about Judas's motivation, but Ellen G. White writes in The Desire of Ages, page 716, Judas had naturally a strong love for money, but he had not always been corrupt enough to do such a deed as this. He had fostered the evil spirit of avarice until it had become the ruling motive of his life. The love of mammon overbalanced his love for Christ. Through becoming the slave of one vice, he gave himself to Satan to be driven to any lengths in sin. End of quote. Betrayal in itself is deplored by all, even by those who make use of betrayers. Let's compare Matthew 27, verses 3 to 7. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. But Judas's deed is particularly nefarious because he seeks to hide his betrayal under the guise of friendship. He gives the crowd instruction that the man he kisses is the man to arrest. It appears that Judas wanted to hide his perfidy from Jesus and the other disciples. Chaos breaks out when the crowd arrests Jesus. Someone draws a sword, John 18:10 and 11 says it was Peter, and cuts off the ear of the high priest's servant. Let's read that in John 18, verse 10 onwards. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Jesus addresses the mob, chastising them for doing in secret what they were afraid to do in the open, when he was teaching in the temple. But Jesus ends with a reference to the scriptures being fulfilled. It is another signal of that dual plot running through the Passion narrative, that the will of God is coming to fulfillment even as the will of man works to destroy the Messiah. The disciples all flee, including Peter, who nevertheless will reappear, following Jesus at a distance and ending up getting himself in trouble. But Mark 14:51 and 52 tells of a young man following Jesus, an account found here and nowhere else in the canonical Gospels. And that reads, A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Some think it was Mark himself, but that is unprovable. What is remarkable is that he runs away naked. The young man, instead of leaving all to follow Jesus, leaves all to flee from Jesus. And so to finish today, think about the fearful idea that being a slave of only one vice led Judas to do what he did. What should this tell us about hating sin and, by God's grace, overcoming it? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.